Hello, everybody, and welcome to Authored Content. This is episode something, the October 2014 Pumpkin Spiced Latte edition.
That's
Because,
very
as
good.
we all know, when October comes around, all of a sudden everything must have pumpkin in it. So does Authored Content, apparently.
Yeah, we should have had a pumpkin today here.
Yeah, I know. This occurred to me as I was driving home from the gym, and I didn't have time to pick one up. I actually had, for the first time ever, because I used to live in a country where pumpkins don't grow. I planted pumpkins this year in my yard,
Oh, that's right. I
and
think I saw some photos. Yeah, very cool.
they were this big. When I came up. So I think they were. I don't know what we planted because we got it from a friend. I'm thinking it was probably some sort of mini pumpkin that I planted, which would explain the size. Because when we actually opened them and ate them, they were just like regular pumpkins, except they were tiny.
It's
It's
because
really
you're
funny.
it's because you're going all organic more, and you got to pump a lot of stuff in there, lots of chemicals to make them grow. When you go organic and you don't have
That
any cows to provide you with manure for them, that's how big they get.
Sure, that might have something to do with this. Yeah, I was just really confused because I was like, "Oh, look, they're pumpkins." So then they just stopped growing and they just stayed that size, and then they became more and more
Like
mature.
riper, yeah.
Yeah, you could see they were ripening. And then at the end, we were like, "I guess they're not getting any bigger, so we
Yeah.
better ripe because the plant is just dying around, so you know it's done, right?"
Yeah,
So I was
you
expecting these giant
really
things,
this
but
this is one time where I should get my wife involved in this because I know nothing about keeping things alive other than children. My green skills are horrible. I can do one thing well, or at least reasonably well enough to make a living, and it's what I do now. Anything else would be poorly done. So,
I think you're
uh,
selling yourself short, my friend.
well, I can take photos too. That I learned how to do.
Right. So we've been kind of away and back and away. You were away last week, and then now James is away, and then I'll be away next week.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, the end of the year is just kind of crazy for us. I just got back from the Web Unleashed conference, and that was pretty cool. That's where I was coming back from, and so
mhm.
just flying back from Canada. You forget how poorly, I don't know, how bad it is to not have, a phone that has internet connection. You almost die. Like it's just horrible.
Yes, you almost die. That is correct.
And I
Without
and it, I
internet connection on your phone, your heart
it's
ceases
horrible.
to function, and you
It's like you
collapse
can't
in a
do
pile of.
anything. Oh my gosh, I gotta learn because I've never learned this, and maybe you can teach me like how to do that thing where you get a SIM card and you put it like in an old phone, and then you have, I gotta do that. I've never done that before.
I think you just outlined exactly what is involved in that process.
Yeah, but I don't know like where to go. Like, do you find a shady guy like in a corner somewhere? Are they at the airport? I don't know how they do this in Canada. Ever since I encountered the Slurpees with no busyness to them, I'm confused about Canadians.
Yes,
How
you should
dare
go to
they?
some shady guy at the airport and ask him if you can buy a SIM card, because that is not going to cause any problems for you
How about the
whatsoever.
border guards? Can I do that to the border guards? Because when you get there, they ask you like all these people. They make you nervous. Like, where are you going? How long are you going to be staying? This is our plan. And you're like, I don't even know like Canada. So when they ask me where I'm staying, I'm like in a hotel, I think. Where are you going? To a conference place, thing. Like, I don't know. You
Yeah,
know.
so you haven't had the pleasurable experience of being a foreigner going into the United States. So
Oh, they don't
what,
just let you in?
whatever, man.
So they say it's Mr. Rand Hendrickson, Abergodist or whatever.
Yes, that's what they say exactly. No, but you bring up a very interesting point because, as we all know, these devices that we carry around. I wonder where my phone is. Hmm, it's not here. These devices that we carry around are more and more tethered to the web permanently, and they're very much designed in such a way that you're now supposed to put all of your data on the internet in the cloud so
Mhm.
that you have access to everything all the time. Now, that's great, provided two things. first that you have an internet plan that can actually give you that access you need so that you
Hmm.
can offset all the storage to a server and pull it down, which means you have to have rather large bandwidth. And the second is that you have to have mobility, right? Now, if you remember back a couple of years, it's not that far back actually. It was like if you were in the United States and you were traveling from, let's say, the East Coast to the West Coast, you would have to pay extra to get access to your data plan,
Wow.
just like you would when you were calling people, right? When you're in LA and you're calling Florida, you have to pay
Hmm.
long distance fees for the calling. But the service providers very quickly realized that wasn't going to work. So they just said you have internet access in the entire country, including Hawaii,
Hmm.
for the same price, right? And
And,
now
And
they're starting to
Alaska, I
do that
imagine.
with calls too. So they have,
Don't sell,
nationwide calling and all that stuff.
don't sell Alaska short, please.
Yeah, well, Alaska too, but yeah,
Possibly Puerto
like
Rico. Who knows?
in physical distance, Hawaii is further away and more isolated than anything else,
Got it.
right? So it's really weird when you travel to Hawaii and you're like, oh,
Everything
uh,
works.
I have phone access. Like you're so far away. You're basically in a different time zone. Everything is different, but yet you're somehow directly connected. But as you experienced, once you cross a national border, all of a sudden your entire life gets changed simply because you don't have that direct access. And
Mm.
the phone companies are making a killing
Killing. Yes, that was
on
ridiculous.
this.
I tried to set, I like, well, let me try to get some data, and it was just ridiculously expensive. And like I said, I need to find alternative ways. It's just ridiculous. We're like in the 21st century now. There's no
Yeah.
need for that sort of
Well,
nonsense.
there's actually a hearing going on in Canada right now where there's a lot of hoopla about what the big cable providers, phone service providers, and everyone are doing and how they're screwing people over.
Mm.
And the regulatory body in Canada is trying to figure it out, like figure out what's going on, who's actually in charge, what is okay and
Okay, I think I don't
because
know.
one of the things they're. Am I gone for you?
You're like stuttering a little bit, but I got you
Okay.
back, so you're good.
Yeah, what they've seen is that the roaming charges are preposterous.
Hmm.
They simply because it doesn't cost the cell phone company $75 a megabyte when you cross the border, yet that's what they charge. And
Hmm.
it's gotten to the point where they've now earlier this year they passed a law that was applied to all the cell phone companies that they can't charge you more than I think $50
Hmm.
in roaming fees, and then after that they just cut your connection so that if you are surfing the internet randomly and you don't know you're roaming, you'll never be charged more than $50 because you've all heard the stories of like coming home
Hmm.
to a $2,000 bill because you've been surfing Google or whatever. Um, but I'm wondering how long it's going to take before companies like Google and Microsoft and Apple put enough pressure on the ISPs or the cell phone service providers to stop pretending like those arbitrary national borders really have any significance on data
Hmm.
streaming on devices. Because Google, Apple, and Microsoft rely on people having internet access across national borders. You can imagine when Google starts shipping, and both Google and Apple are now working on integration with cars, right? So that you buy a
Hmm.
car, you'll have a Google thing inside the car that gives you GPS data in real time. Just imagine crossing the border with that device. All of a
Mm.
sudden, you lose your GPS because you don't have internet access, right?
So this
So
must
that
happen to you all
fancy
the time
thing you
because
install,
I
like
mean,
it's crazy. And the
yeah.
infrastructure is there to support it, but the companies that are providing it are living in an alternate reality where we're still in 1985 and
Yeah.
national borders have
But as,
relevance.
yeah, as long as they're not forced to do it, I think companies, big companies, are just going to try to take the revenue. And you, like I was saying, like you must run into this all the time because especially like between Vancouver and Seattle, like
Yep.
they're so close. You can drive, you can probably, I don't know, a jogger, do a marathon from one place to another. And it's really weird. Must be weird for you when you just are almost like what would be to me just going to Orlando,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
having
nuts.
to. change
And
everything about your connection.
yeah, you cross the border, and then it takes about 5 minutes, and then you get out of range of the Canadian towers,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden you no longer have internet access. And I'm now reliant on finding, a Starbucks or something with Wi-Fi. And a lot of people here in Vancouver, because they cross the border into Seattle so much, they buy these either portable hotspots,
Oh
and
yeah,
they
the
just have
MiFi, yeah.
yeah, and they just have some sort of plan in the States, and they hold it permanently. And I might actually do that. I'm considering getting a permanent plan in the States, and then just swap out the SIM cards when I'm going there. So I'll actually take my phone and just pull out the SIM
Hmm.
card, put it in. We did that when we traveled to Romania, and we also discovered in Romania that data plans in Romania are insanely cheap.
Hmm.
Like just we paid what I think something like $20 for 3 months, and that gave us
Holy cow!
basically unlimited internet
Wow.
in a country that in some places really is a third world country. You
Hmm.
have infinitely better internet access than you have here.
Well, it's
And
going to
then we
take
went to
Google.
France, and it was just a total crap fest because that was not the same.
Well, it's going to take Google with the balloons or the drones or something
Yeah,
to change. It's until you attack the revenue models while they're making lots of monies. I mean, companies didn't really bring those prices down until the internet came along and internet said, hey, you know what? You could do voice over IP and nobody needs to pay. And so
yeah,
all of a sudden everything became cheap. I remember when I called my dad in Panama was always like, hello, how you doing? Let me let you talk to your mom. And it was like
yeah.
2 or 3 minutes, and that was like the call. Now my dad calls me, 3 times a week, and he doesn't have anything to, I don't even. I'm like, Dad, you just called me. Like, nothing new
I
has
don't want to talk
happened.
to you in person.
No, 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 nothing new has happened since this morning when you called me. So, but yeah, I guess that needs to change.
So, what did you actually do at this conference in Canada?
So this is pretty cool. I was speaking at Web Unleashed, and I was talking on what is almost sort of like a different subject for me. It's not JavaScript. It was SaaS and responsive design. This is really odd because a while back, like maybe a month and a half ago, I was about to do a course on gaming, on JavaScript gaming, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to get some great assets and build this thing. And all of a sudden, I realized that somebody else was already building that. Like as I was sort of ready to like work on this thing, somebody else was building, a course in the library with the library that I wanted to use, and so I had to change, sort of shift what I was going to do. And I said, I really want to do something with responsive design. As you know, like I came from a design background. I
Mhm.
have my degrees in journalism. I worked at print shops, and I got a job online because of my design portfolio in print originally. And so I'm like, man, my job used to be so much design. I want to do something where I can take advantage of, the things that I've learned and attack some of these like libraries that are really useful to help people build things quickly. And I think Doug, our boss, defines it as me always doing a project with like 50 plugins and
Yes.
10 libraries. And but it changes the way that you work when you don't have to worry about things like prefixes, or you don't have to worry about, or when you make media queries easier, and when you automate the whole process, it really changes the way that you work and makes things simple. So it was really about that, like building a workflow with SAS and using a couple of other libraries, mainly one called Suzy, which is essentially a library that lets you do grids. It's layout grids that you define yourself. It was just super liberating, and then I added like, because I'm adding like 50 plugins, I added scrolling effects, and I did some research on the different frameworks for that, and I picked one called Scroll Magic, just because I'm really sort of picky about not messing my HTML semanticity. I don't know if that's a word, but making my HTML
Semanticity.
not have not having HTML have a bunch of like layout tags in it, like when you use Bootstrap or other foundation or something else, you end up doing all this like COLMD5 and COLXS and all these tags that if you change your mind about the layout, you got to dig into your HTML. And honestly, we were taught never to do that, so this makes it kind
Mhm.
of easier to just do all the layout in SAS and CSS. and build stuff quicker and faster. That's what I was talking about, and it was a super it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Super well received. People really enjoyed using 50 tools. Apparently, I didn't know. I had no clue. I thought it was just me. I think it's all about like if it makes your life if on the, at the end of when you do the process, like if it makes your life actually easier, and it solves a bunch of problems, then who cares how many things you've got installed. So that's what it was about. So
So there was a
planning on
workshop.
yeah, there was actually a workshop on I did a workshop on Angular, and then I had a talk on this SaaS responsive SaaS layouts. So it
Right.
was kind of a duo. And yeah, the Angular stuff was great. But the SaaS was actually I think better received, which
Yeah.
was great.
I went to FITC when they were in Vancouver a couple of years ago. It
Was
was
it in Vancouver? Yeah, they do a lot of really cool conference. I'm going back to another one later in October, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This
mhm.
like October 22nd and 23rd. And I'm going to be doing a similar talk, but I'm going to be in Toronto. I really just talked about the responsive design part. So in Halifax and Collide Halifax, which is what the conference is called, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the entire process, but specifically more about the scrolling effects that are kind of popular,
Uh-huh.
arguably controversial, but you see them so much that it's become something that I think clients are asking for. And so, since people need to know how to build them, that's what the second sort of part of the course is about.
Right. Actually, the weather's not going to be that bad in
Oh, okay.
Halifax.
I don't have to bring my, you
It's
know,
like
my Russian hat.
15. You said 24th, right?
Yeah, October 24th. Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
It should be. I think
So
it
it's
was like
like
50,
14,
60.
15 degrees. That's okay.
So it's like, yeah, it's like San Francisco or something in summer, like in July,
It,
or Vancouver whenever I went there.
yes. No, it's the eastern part of Canada. They get some pretty intense winters. So
Yes.
I was wondering if you'd encounter that and your Florida mentality would be a little shaken by
No, 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 I'm sure my blood is a lot thinner.
it.
I mean, when I went to Canada, I think it was really beautiful weather. I can't. It was a little rainy, but it was very, very beautiful. And I didn't really. It wasn't like when I went to Vancouver. I saw these people like in the sleet, swimming and doing the dragon boat racing, which was like
Right.
insane. I'm like, what is wrong with these all nuts? The one then I understood more about you, Morten. I mean, I was like,
Yes.
okay, well, this must be the weather must affect Morten, even though he's Nordic. So
So while you were in or last week, I was in CARP recording a new course too. I can talk about it a bit, even though I don't normally talk about what I do. But we're
and I just
doing
blab
a
about all kinds of stuff. So
I was doing a larger course on the process of web design.
mhm,
So for all of the over uh, very high level look at all the things that go together to make a website, all the
mhm,
planning stages, when you do testing, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of interesting. It'll be interesting to see once that course is out, how you're kind of focusing on the micro level of the
mhm,
same stuff that I'm focusing on.
mhm,
Because I'm talking about the overall process, and then within that process, what you were doing in your course actually fits in really nicely because it has to do with how to take all these planning ideas and put them into action using tools that make the process simpler.
mhm.
And I think a lot of things that are happening in the community now have to do with simplifying things. It was too bad you weren't here last week when James and I were talking about CSS and how to write it properly, because
Yeah.
one of the things we discussed was this idea of preprocessors
Mhm,
and whether or not they make sense. Because both James and I are kind of old school obsessive people who
I
really
know.
like to control our code, whereas you're maybe not so much.
Nope.
And we were talking about this, the human factor versus the machine factor, and what goes into it. So once all these courses come online and people can start seeing there's an actual system to all this stuff and everything fits together, it'll be really fun to see how what people bring out of it. and how they can incorporate it into their own projects.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing those type of courses because I think we really need a lot of those in the library, and we don't have enough um, of that type of sort of thinking about the process and letting people know how important it is to do a lot of planning. I mean, I did a lot of that when I was at Tribune, working on redesigning like really big newspaper sites. It was all about that process, and people don't get to hear enough about it.
Hmm.
And they're a lot of times they're more sort of maybe excited, or when they go to a conference, they kind of want to see like what's the new cutting edge thing, what's the latest framework, the latest tool, and all that stuff changes. But the stuff that you're talking about all stays the same. It's like solid planning, sketching, and making sure that you've got your good communication between you and the process, so that you come out with good work.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm sure you encountered this too when you started out, that there was a time in the web design world where we went from publishing web pages to communicate, right? To basically, like, that's where the web came from, right? Scientists wanted to share their
Hmm.
data with other people without having to physically print it out and send it by mail to other people, right?
Hmm.
And there was in the 80s and early 90s, that was pretty much what the web was. People just wanted to put information online and then others could read it and consume it and put their own information up. And then there was this shift where we started really focusing on the appearance of it, and that's when
Hmm.
front page and Dreamweaver really started taking off as all these kind of drag and drop type situations where you could just dump stuff into a page and it looked nice, but the semantics were insane. And then you got Flash, which was an even more extreme version of that, where you basically just drew stuff on a pane and then it would always work the same way. And in the process, the entire communication layer just kind of disappeared.
Hmm.
And we've seen a return to that in that the backlash of Flash was now that was really what forced proper semantic HTML and web standards to come back. That people realized, hey, the screens change all the time, and we need to really build something that works. And now I think that what we're seeing is a lot of these tools are coming online, like the services. WordPress.com is an example. Wix and Squarespace are other examples, where the idea of the site just magically building itself is becoming very commonplace in the mentality of people. And in the process of doing that, we're also creating an environment where people think that building a website is about just throwing pieces together and then putting content on and everything will be fine. And this kind of templating type mentality. And while that's great for some things, personal projects and specific type of things, it's not great for the overall web community, I think, because it takes away the process, right? Like when we build websites, we don't start in Photoshop, or we don't start by picking a template. We start by going, who is this for? Why are we building a website? What are we trying to communicate? How do we best communicate all that information? What do these people want and how do we talk to them in the best possible way? And then we make the content and then we build the website around the content. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do in that course, is say, take a step back and think about what you're doing when you're publishing content, rather than just saying, here is something that looks nice, I'm going to put content in it that fits within this framework. And to that, I wanted to bring something else up, because we right before the show we were talking about Windows 10, which we will talk about in a second. But there was something else that came out from Microsoft this week, which I found extremely interesting. So let me just bring that up on a screen share here. Screen two. Share.
While you bring that up, I was recently at a conference, or I went to a meetup that had one of the Muse project managers, and that tool is getting to be pretty impressive. I mean, the way that it can do some of the animations that you handle with JavaScript now is so impressive that I wonder if at some point it will be so difficult to code the design part of a website that those tools will really be the only way that you can accomplish certain things.
Mm-hmm. So what I have here is the Norwegian 90s artist Sway with his extremely famous song "Yum Yum Give Me Some." Uh,
Oh, I thought that was you for a second.
it's truly truly interesting. This is not what Microsoft released, but it was funny because the product they did release is called Sway, and the first thing I thought of was, of course, this awful, awful, awful song
That's fun.
from
Okay.
90s. So Sway is a new offering from Microsoft. It falls in under the Office package. So you can see up in the corner here, there's a little Office icon. And it's a little bit hard to understand exactly what this is because the way they're presenting it, they're on the one hand, this is going to be a presentation type application where you have ideas, you want to present them to people, you use this application. Let's see if I skip a little bit ahead here. You have, it's a mobile and desktop type application. You just type in what you want, and then you can drag and drop pieces in, and it all works together. Now, the interesting part about this, from my perspective, is that this is HTML. This is basically a web builder that builds, it's much like what you just talked about, Muse. It's HTML5 with a bunch of JavaScript on top of it and a bunch of templates that where you as the user, you just take content and dump it into these areas, and then they just get added and you build a web page. And that web page then lives on Azure, which is their cloud hosting service. And when I saw it, the first thing I thought was, this looks like what they wanted to do with things like Front Page back in the 90s. The idea that anyone can just build something that looks fantastic based on templates without actually knowing what's going on behind the scenes, which is both good and bad at the same time. And I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out because it's in pre-beta now. It's not even in beta yet. But it's obvious that Microsoft is really trying to do something different and new here with this Sway application. And I think that this might be Microsoft trying to recapture what they had with, or what they were trying to do with the blend for HTML5 only for the consumer rather than for the developers.
Yeah, so this space is sort of heating up. The build your own thing using drag and drop, and you don't need to know any code. I think it's going to be really interesting to see who sort of emerges as the leader of that space, because I do think that there's a place for it, and like I said, I think eventually some of these things that we're seeing are going to get so complicated that if somebody has a compelling product that allows people to just design their sites as they think about them, then it could work. Eventually, a lot of the discussions that the higher end sort of developers have about keeping your code tiny, making less calls, those things as bandwidth explodes, those things are going to be moot. Like, who cares how long, if you got to make 5 requests versus 1 request.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll take less power and all that, and the planet will be greener, but ultimately, people want to get their stuff done. They want to think about what you're talking about. They want to think about process. They want to think about how to reach their clients. They want to think about selling product. They don't care about the fact that it's 5 versus 3 calls or something like that to an extra JavaScript or jQuery file. And so I think that there is a future in this. Adobe has made a lot of progress because of their Creative Cloud and their market. They have made a lot of progress in capturing that space. I don't know about Sway. I don't know. Anything that Microsoft comes out with, it's like you're throwing a dice somewhere, and it's like a 50-sided dice. You don't know if it's going to land and do well. And so I'm sorry, they just don't have a good track record.
Historically, Microsoft has a really strange track record when it comes to front-end web development tools, because they had Front Page, which was a big deal for a long time, but then eventually Front Page got outcompeted by Dreamweaver, and it was also because it wasn't evolving fast enough. You'll remember Front Page made these completely insane JavaScript batches to do very simple things like rollovers for menus. And then they abandoned Front Page completely, and then they rolled out this new line of products, which was the Expression Suite, that originally had Expression Design, Expression Web, Expression Blend, and Expression Encoder. And the idea back then was that Expression was going to be, so the core of the application was Expression Blend, which allowed you to make Silverlight apps, and Silverlight was a direct competitor to Flash. And then Expression Web was only bundled in to allow you to make a Silverlight app, and then place it inside a web page. And then design was, to allow you to design stuff for Silverlight, and Expression Encoder was made to let you encode videos to put into Silverlight. And in the end of that whole track, what ended up happening was Expression Web was the only viable product in the package, but that wasn't what Microsoft wanted. So they just killed off Expression Web, which was my application, like what I worked on all the time, and I was in the
Yes,
alpha group. And
I believe you were an MVP for that product,
yeah.
right?
And then they took all the people that worked on that and put them into something called Blend for HTML5. And the idea with Blend for HTML5 was that they wanted, when Windows 8 came out, they wanted all these front-end developers who worked with .NET to start making Windows 8 apps. And that was done in HTML5 and the WinJS, so the Windows 8 JavaScript engine that lives only in Windows 8, so that they could make all these really advanced apps in HTML5 and ship them to Windows 8. My theory is that Sway is the end result of all of that stuff collapsing on itself. That they realized, we are trying to make people do something they don't want to do. No one wants to make these apps, and especially not in HTML5. And we've alienated all these people who want to just build websites, because there was a time when they actually explicitly said, we don't think people want to make websites, they want to make apps instead. And everyone in the room was like, no, you're wrong. That's not reality, that's just in your head. But that's what they went with. And now it looks to me like they've taken that finally 5 years later and said, let's make a front-end web development app that truly is drag and drop. You just have content, you just slap it in, put some templates on it, and then everything works. And I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because it could, like you said, go both ways. But my expectation is that what they do here will be prevalent enough because it'll be shipped with Office. And now people have Office 365 just like they have Adobe CC. So it'll just appear for people. At which point, all these people who are currently making these services, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, everything else, will have to figure out a way of catching up with this. Because what is compelling about what they have in this demo, at least, is the idea that you take your content and you just slot it in. And then you say, I don't like how this looks, and you click on a button, and it changes the entire layout and design of the content without you having to worry about the content, which is basically what Themes and WordPress does, but on a way more interactive level. So, who knows?
Yeah, I give it a no-go. I mean, the problem with Microsoft is this: like, they grab the absolute top of the line best racehorse on the planet, and then they find the best, the best rider in existence, and then they take the rider and they put him on the horse backwards. And they wonder, why didn't this work? We had the best of everything. They make truly amazing products. They have excellent engineers, really good thinking. But at some point, somebody makes a really stupid decision. Put the thing in backwards, and then they wonder, like, why didn't this take? I mean, front page, we used front page at Tribune, when I was working there. And that was the way that we updated the site, until we realized that somebody could really screw the site up by just doing the wrong thing in front page and completely take down the whole entire, website for us. So we banned it. And, Expression Web, I think the problem, I don't know if this is necessarily a problem, but it was an extremely expensive product. Like, as a developer, I would have liked to try it, but I can't remember. It was $500 or something like that?
Expression Web was $150.
Whatever it was like,
it was cheaper than everything else on the market. And it was the only, at the time, the only application that shipped and only produced HTML5 standards-based code. It wouldn't let you publish code that wasn't...
This is why you're an MVP, because they gave you like a thing of Kool-Aid and you went for it.
No, I made them do it. That's why I was an MVP, because I kept going after them over it all the time. Yeah. So like, Expression Web was just misunderstood. It was Blend that was expensive. And Blend you wouldn't want to use anyway, because it was a big piece of crap. Expression Web was probably the best front-end WYSIWYG editor ever built. And I'm saying that because I used it, and I know how it worked.
Yeah, I believe you, but somehow they just don't understand it. I don't know what they do. Like I said, they have a great product, a great racehorse, and then they do something really dumb with it, and then they lose it. And it's like, okay, why don't we bundle everything together? And instead of charging $150, we'll charge $500, and we'll make so much more money. And you're like, no, you can't do that. Like, you got to get people to accept your product and be dependent on it. Give it away for free like some of these web companies are doing, or let people try it. and then or blend it into something like you said, and put it into Office, and don't charge anything for it. And then maybe once you get enough traction and the industry loves it and people are building like these great websites, then you can, maybe mess with the price, or they just something about them. They just can't do it. They can't bring themselves to go, let's not make any money with this at first. And it just like blows up in their face. It's got
Which
to
brings
be
us, which brings us to the other
Minecraft,
big thing.
the Minecraft.
Yeah, well, see, there's a bunch of things that are happening with Microsoft now, right? There's
Right.
Minecraft. All of a sudden, they bought Minecraft, and everyone's like, "What?" And then 2 days later, the guy from Minecraft was like, "There's a reason why this happened, and it's not, it's because I don't want to deal with all you idiots anymore." Basically, um, and then they released a pre-alpha of Windows 10, which makes everyone ask, "What happened to Windows 9?"
Yeah. Yeah, like they
So
ate up Windows 9. They probably said, you know what, it sucks anyways. Let's go with 10. Like we got 9 and it was like, I don't know, Vista. And they said, no, that's not gonna work. Let's just like forget that one. I think do you think it's more like a branding thing so that they can finally say this is Windows OS X?
I honestly think it has something to do with them trying to say this is not a descendant of
Vista
Windows
Plus. Yeah.
8.
Windows 8 Plus.
They
Right.
don't want it to be a descendant of Windows 8. Well, it is, um,
Did you find
but
it that much more revolutionary that it deserved to skip a number? I mean, that's what I would think. If you're gonna say we're going from 8 to 10, then you gotta prove that the product is so much different and so much superior, and not just say it. Like I don't think just calling it 10 is going to. I think
well, if we're to believe the Reddit, which we all know is a very, very dangerous game, um, there are some people that are claiming to be somehow involved in this, who are saying that the naming has to do with backwards compatibility. Because there are things in Windows 8 and Windows Vista and Windows 7 and Windows, God knows, all those other ones that have legacy all the way back to Windows 95, right? And there is a theory that is circulating that they are finally saying, cut, we're starting over and getting rid of all the backwards compatibility. And that would be really hard to argue for if you were shipping Windows 9 because it's a, you know, logical next step. So there is a rumor that this has to do with exactly that, that they are cutting off some of the older legacy code.
oh my gosh, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah, horrible as in that's what Apple does all the time. So
Yeah,
whatever.
but Apple's not Microsoft. I mean,
No,
Apple doesn't
so
have 90% of the market.
well, see,
Apple doesn't have these people still using Windows NT 95 probably if you find some places in China. I mean, you know.
it's it's gonna be interesting to see what it is they're doing because they're obviously there are multiple levels in this, right? They're obviously trying to learn from their mistakes with Windows 8 and actually make touch-friendly OS that actually works the way people expect it to, behaving in a way that people are used to, which is what they messed up with 8 and then fixed again with 8.1. But at that point, the name was so mired in rumors that they couldn't get rid of it. But it's, yeah, I'm really curious to see what they're trying to do because there's also all this, upheaval within the company. I mean, they fired a bunch of people, they got a new CEO in, they got everything changed. Their whole company structure and everything and their mentality about what they're doing is changing. Uh, yeah, it's just
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, I know that people say that I'm an Apple fanboy and everything, and I obviously have all Apple stuff, so I think I qualify it. If you say something bad about Apple, I probably will get upset because I think most of it is misunderstanding. However, I want Microsoft to be awesome. I want nothing better than to have a great, healthy, exciting Microsoft with products that rival, and even I want them to do better, to be better. I would love them to be Apple, but it just doesn't seem to happen very often.
huh. So there's someone saying early test. I'm quoting here from a magazine. Early testing revealed just how many third-party products have code in the form of Windows 9, referring to benchmark operating systems Windows 95 and Windows 98. And that's problematic because, the number 9 figures. So by skipping the number 9, you won't have any kind of code conflicts internally. That might actually that might make more sense than what I just said because that's an actual programmatic reason for avoiding Windows 9 as a name.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know what's going on. I just see, to me, honestly, it seems like some sort of marketing thing. Like, let's call it 10.
Yeah.
And
Windows 10 carries Windows forward into a new way of doing things. It is not an incremental change, but a new Windows that will empower the next billion users. That's from Microsoft.
really, honestly, I really hope it does. Good luck to good luck.
Yeah,
I'm not against Microsoft.
it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm very curious about it. The early demos are kind of all over the place, but I honestly am waiting for an operating system company to come up with something new.
You mean like Chrome?
No, because Chrome just
You're
looks
waiting for
like
Chrome.
Windows and Mac OS. I want
Oh, I see
something
completely.
new. I mean, if you think about it, all the OSs, including all the different Linux distributions and everything, they all look the same. You have
You're
your
right.
desktop, you have your toolbar, you have your icons. I would like to see someone just throw that entire book out and just start over. Because that is a really old way of thinking. I mean, that goes back to what? Pink and
Yeah,
Windows 0.1 and Microsoft
it's
Bob and all
Xerox. I
that
mean,
crap.
Bob. Yeah, it's like Xerox Park. I mean, Mac OS. Windows 1. Like, yeah, I mean, I think iOS kind of brought maybe Surface and iOS brought some maybe new thinking just because you have a different interface and you have to change. But I'm not exactly sure what would be better. Like where they could. I mean, somebody has to think of something better.
I don't know. I'm just curious to see if someone actually tries to
New
go
thinking.
because we talked about all these things, right? You remember a couple of years ago, there were people had these 3D desktops where you would
Hmm.
like you have the desktop that you could flip down, and then you could like stack papers on top of one another, and it
Hmm.
was more like a super skeuomorphic interface. And there were some other people that were making one where you had expanding and contracting elements, and you could like move things in and out as you wanted to in a touch interface. There were a lot of ideas that came out a couple of years ago, all of which disappeared. And it wasn't like everyone was raving about them and then they vanished.
Yeah, perhaps they were just sort of bad ideas. Like they didn't quite work. I mean, skew for I can't even say that word, but a skew.
Skeuomorphism.
Thank you. Like it just didn't seem to pan out as a direction. And so something else has to come along. Like that thing in Minority Report where the person's doing like this and that. It looks really cool, but when you try to do that all day, you're like, okay, that's not
Yeah,
gonna be
I
make me
think Leap
faster.
Motion pretty much proved that that doesn't work in real life at all.
Yeah, and we have
Because
Oculus Rift right now trying to make a dent in that world. I don't know how that's gonna pan out. 3D environments. More power
it's
to them, though. I wish everybody the best, and I hope somebody does come up with something better.
yeah, we'll see. There was one more thing I wanted to show you. This is purely me bragging, by the way. So you may remember that
Go for it.
uh, earlier this year we released a course on lynda.com called uh, building themes from scratch using underscores, which is a course on shockingly building themes from scratch using underscores, these WordPress starter theme. And in the process of building that course, I actually released a theme. So when you take the course, you learn how to build a specific theme. It's called Simone. And I also released the theme Simone to the WordPress themes directory. And this month, Simone is one of the 10 featured themes on the front page. So this is a random order thing, so you see it. So it's right here.
Yeah, there it is. Wow,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's awesome.
And that means when you, in your WordPress install, go to Appearance and Themes and click on Featured, you will see Simone as one of the featured themes. I have to thank Joe Dolson for that because he's the one that nominated the theme in.
Yeah,
But
because I like try time and they like poo-pooed on me. I mean, they're like, it's not good enough. Well, whatever. Honestly, I'm not as good as anywhere near as good as you, but it seems like a tough process. Like you kind of have to know somebody or.
Well, this is truly like Simone has turned into a very much a group effort. If you look closely at this description, you'll see that the theme is now available in English
Mhm.
with translations in Finnish, French, German, Hungarian, Italian, Norwegian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. And I also have a translation in Chinese that's coming.
Very cool.
And there's someone working on Hebrew and someone working on Arabic.
Maybe.
And they're just
I think I'm
waiting.
gonna every semester I make my students start all with the same theme and see how they can uh, modify the theme themselves to kind of make them practice modifying something. So this might be a good a
Yeah,
good starter theme,
you
right?
should use this
I
one.
should make them. Yeah, I will try that this semester and see how
This
they react.
this theme is specifically built to be continued, continue to be built on. But what I wanted to say was, when I released this theme, I did it with several different intents in mind. One was I wanted to prove that you can build an accessible WordPress theme, so it's fully accessible, keyword
Mhm.
accessible. Everything is done to WCAG standards, and that's not hard. And that was something I achieved. So this is now one of the, I think, 10 available themes for WordPress that are fully accessible out of the 2,800 available. The other thing I wanted to do was make a theme that is fully translatable and make the translation process as easy as possible for human beings so that it could be distributed. And in the translation process, it was truly a matter of I thought I had made it fully translatable, and I had for my own language. But when I had other people try to translate it, like into Hungarian or Russian or Portuguese or other languages, I discovered all these pieces of like strings of text I had created that simply were not translatable into other languages.
Hmm.
And it gave me a whole new appreciation of something I always talk about, which is languages are different and people understand things differently, but I truly realized in the process how important it is that we make things that are actually properly translatable to other people.
Hmm.
Because I think we're too, especially when we're in the English speaking world, we're too content with everyone understands English. And then we just build everything around English. But that's simply not a functional way of doing things because the world is much bigger and the internet world is not in the English speaking world, it's everywhere. So there are some interesting lessons learned from this, and I've also seen, how people want to contribute, which is awesome because it's on GitHub, so people can just go in and submit things. And I've had people come in and fix my code for me,
Very
suggest
cool.
weird things I never considered, added, said you're. Someone was actually complaining about my CSS being inconsistent, which
Hmm.
bugged me a lot because I was like, what? But I have my own standards, and I had somehow managed to break my own standards. And someone had
You just
gone
gotta get
in.
used to people complain about anything. I mean, you could do a perfect thing, and
Well, it
people
was
sometimes.
funny because I am harping on it so much, and she came in and she was like, "For someone who harps on it so much, you are aware that you make mistakes." And then there was one mistake, so she had actually gone through 2,000 lines of code and found one error in it, and was like, "Ha! Ha
I
ha
gotcha.
ha! You're totally being inconsistent." And it was
So
funny because it was,
what's the get it? Where can people? Well, besides WordPress, you said there's a GitHub page. So
yeah.
where's that at? I'd love to
So
make
if
sure
you
I
go
subscribe and
to
star it. And
github.com/Morten,
is it MOR10 or MR10?
it's always Morten with a 1 0.
Okay. Well, you got to tell people that or they're
Yeah.
not gonna.
So if you go to github.com, I will put up the links so you guys can see it if you're interested. I'll put it in the showcase app. Um, Here is the current version. This version is actually ahead of the published version
Okay.
because
All right. 89
because
commits.
uh, yeah,
Quite a
there's
few.
a lot of commits and a lot of people who have contributed to it.
26 stars and 24. So far so good. Yeah, I invite everybody to go find out where Morton make all his mistakes
Yes,
and point them out
please
to him.
tear it apart. There's what I'm working on right now is right to left support, so
Wow.
that languages that are right to left can do it. That means I need to move the sidebar, have an option to move the sidebar to the other side. because I had a long conversation with someone who wanted to translate it into Arabic about
Mm.
how it should be laid out. Like, does that mean the menus need to swap sides? Does that mean the sidebar needs to move over? And he basically said, yeah, anything, it's like you mirror the whole site. So all my design decisions, well, you know this, it's like moving a sidebar from right to left is not just click, click, and then it's done. And
Right.
especially not in a theme like this, where the sidebar is meant to glue to one side of the screen. So as the screen gets larger, the sidebar stays to one side.
Hmm.
So I really have to do a lot of work to make that work, and I'm trying to do it in a um, maintainable way. So I have, if you look in the structure here, you'll see there's a folder called layouts, and within the layouts folder, I have different types of layouts. So all the layout styles are broken out into a separate style sheet, and that way, when you make a setting inside the theme settings, you can say I want the sidebar on the left or right, and we'll call a different style sheet depending on what you want. So it's very easy for people to see, but that means I have to very carefully isolate what are layout styles and what are global styles that apply all the time. And when it comes to right to left styles, that conversation changes completely, because then all of a sudden your menu ordering is now a layout style, whereas before it was just menu ordering. So I have to move some of the menu stuff into the layout styles, which is confusing to me, because that, from my perspective, that's not where they belong, but apparently they do now, because it has to be, so it's the
Oh
world
yeah,
is a complicated place.
when I did that WordPress theme, I was like, oh man, this is hard. Like I don't really, and I wasn't even trying to like make it look nice or have it be correct. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna try to do a theme and put it on the WordPress site, and it was like, ah, forget it. This is like for crazy people like Norwegians, you know.
Well, Simone now has 11,000 downloads.
Very nice. But congratulations, sir. That's quite an
Great.
achievement.
I'm going to find that course you were talking about. What is the name of your course again?
It's building responsive layouts, I think. Yeah, that one.
Building responsive layouts.
Yeah, I think it's like building single page. It has like all the keywords you could think of. So the easiest way to get to my courses every time is just lynda.com/Ray Villalobos. Like if you can spell my last name. It's called Building a Responsive Single Page Design.
Building a responsive single page design with
Yep.
Ray Villalobos.
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 Yes, Mr. Ren Hendrickson.
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna pull up this URL and share it in the Showcase app so people can check it out. And then, do you know if there's still tickets left for this thing you're talking about in Nova Scotia?
I'm sure there are. It's a really cool conference. It's
What's it
Collide
called again?
Halifax. It's called Collide.
Collide.
CollideHalifax.com.
Collide Halifax.
Yeah, some pretty cool speakers.
Yeah, like
I'm
really
going to be
cool stuff.
excited. I think last time when I went to Toronto, I took my daughter, so I spent a lot of time with her. This time I'm going by myself, and I'm going to really try to enjoy more of the conference and enjoy my time in Canada to see what penguins do. I don't know.
Yes,
Is that the national
that's
bird
what
in
we all
Canada?
know. Penguins live in the north,
Oh, okay, got it.
as do Santa Claus and all
Got
the
it.
other
Yeah,
things.
wrong place. Yeah, isn't that yeah, I guess the North Pole is where
Come
Santa.
on, man.
Yeah,
Ice.
sorry.
So polar bears in the north,
Got it.
penguins in the south.
I
They
thought some
could
of it
not be on
stayed
the
in
same
Canada.
continent. Imagine that situation.
I took a Canadian geography course, which I got like a B on. Originally I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take an easy course. What could be easier? Oh, Canadian geography. Let's go for it. And shockingly enough, I got a B because I wasn't really trying very hard. But there's two things I learned about Canada. It has a lot of water, like a lot of like
Yeah.
water everywhere within, like inside. It's full of water. The other thing is it has a ton of golf courses.
Oh, the speaker lineup here is awesome.
Yeah, they have
Stefan
really.
Sagmeister?
Mhm.
Really? Is he going to be naked?
Didn't ask. Could be.
You know why I'm asking, right?
Is that guy from that video? I
Stefan
just got naked.
Sagmeister, he's like in his company. Everyone who works for the company has to take a nude photo,
Oh, great.
and it's like
Yeah, let's
all over the
not.
place in their workspace. There's a
I
video of it online. It's crazy.
Yeah, if it was you, they would probably just take pictures of your hands because they know that's what you look at when you're recording your videos. Like
Oh,
that's the last thing I would see. Like if my hands in my videos, I'm like, dang, dude, I need to go work out or something. Like my hands are too big, but whatever. No,
so
that's another company I'll never work for then.
let's see. Are there tickets available? Buy passes.
Yeah, it's actually
Hmm.
part of a whole
Oh
like
yeah.
cultural. It's not just the web conference part, but there's concerts throughout the week, and it
Oh
looks like a
yeah.
really cool.
Halifax Pop Explosion. Music,
Yeah,
comedy, and culture events.
so hopefully I'll be able to
Wow.
go to some cool stuff on there.
Bring your camera, my friend.
I should, yeah. Nowadays I always feel so weird about that. Like it's camera to take pictures with, because my camera is way too heavy. I don't know. I don't want to take it anywhere anymore.
Just buy a new one.
Yeah, buy like a little one. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I
Like one
should
of
do.
those really, really small ones that are super good now. But
Yeah.
yeah, so if you're in the vicinity of Halifax, Nova Scotia, so that would be anywhere on the East Coast, in the north part of the East Coast, then you should totally go to Collide. I would if I was anywhere near there, but I'm on the other side, so
Yeah.
there's no difference between this and a conference being in China for me. It's about the same distance.
Except for the language thing.
Yeah, and it's also during WordCamp San Francisco where I'm speaking, so
Oh,
I
that's
can't
awesome.
so I can't be in two places at once. My cloning machine is still not working.
I can pretend to be you though. I mean, I'll say, build this Simone thing. It's.
You just have to say hello.
Hello.
You have to
I have,
say it like I do. Hello.
I have to practice my ability because you've adopted the accent, I think. Your
Oh
English
yeah,
as
and you're going to the East Coast where people actually talk like that. You're like, how about that?
there.
So you'll come home and be all stereotypically Canadian. All right. Well, that is full time for author content because we have stuff to do elsewhere. I won't be here next week because I'll be at a wedding uh, on a Friday because apparently that's how when people get married. But we will be back again at some point in the future.
Yes. I think we probably need to take off next week. I won't be around, so
Well, I'm not here either, so
yeah.
James will be
Goodbye.
here by himself
Yeah, there you go.
and his dog talking about dog food or something.
That'd be the best show ever.
All right. In the meantime, you can watch back catalog episodes of author content. We have lots of them on the interwebs. If you want a transcript of this show, you can watch it back and type down what we're saying, and then you can read it, and it's super awesome. Or you can watch the awful Google auto translate function. If you click on the closed captioning, turn off the audio and have a laugh because it's hilarious. Thanks for watching. We will be back, as I said, at some point in the future. Same bad time, same bad channel. Until then, to be continued.